Josephine, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. There's never a dull moment in this business. New year, and they're definitely keeping you busy.
Yeah, I know. Welcome back right after the holidays with the Madry news.
Yes.
This morning. It's a really, really crazy time.
What is that? What do you make of that?
I mean, I didn't necessarily expect the feds to be involved at this point. So I mean, it's really crazy. I think it could definitely be, as we were all thinking back in September too, but it feels like this could be like the tip of the iceberg for what's to come. I mean, and to just go back, Jeff Madry, at the end of December, this NYPD lieutenant came out with allegations that he had sexually harassed and forced her to carry out sexual favors in exchange for overtime, which we reported she made hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the then police commissioner. And so, there's been a whole lot of mix-ups after that within the NYPD, and now the Internal Affairs Division is looking into it, and so are the feds.
The DA.
And the DA. So it's just one more case on a pile of we've got Ingrid. We have still all of those investigations that seem to be maybe bubbling beneath the surface. We don't know what's going to happen when Trump becomes president, but we've got the Caban brothers and the Banks brothers and potentially Winnie Greco. There's so many other things. So it's just a huge mess from the Adams administration.
What do you make of the last press conference the mayor had?
On Tuesday?
Yes.
Well, it was interesting. Obviously, he was asked about Madry. This was the first off-topic he had done in 2 weeks, so a lot had happened, and Madry was like the news of the day. He basically refused to say that he has any regrets about boosting Madry, and kind of undermined that too. He said some stuff about, Madry was in the NYPD for decades prior. He had been in a position of power during the de Blasio administration, but he had really been obviously promoted to chief of department by Adams. So I don't know how genuine that claim is. But I don't know. I think he's still not going all the way to like condemn Madry or really go after him, point the finger at him or anything. He's not using him as a scapegoat for anything, which I think is interesting. I mean, he can't really stick by his old friend at this point, and he's not fully doing that. But it's interesting that he won't kind of fully go after him, and that it kind of goes for now pretty much all of his close friends who were in the administration with him have departed, resigned, fired in some cases. So he has very much focused his messaging on, we're moving forward, we have a deep bench, like we're still capable, and hasn't like villainized these people in his inner circle. And I think it's an interesting approach.
How would you rate so far the new police commissioners, man? That
Mm-hmm.
She assumed the position, a lot of changes, rapid changes. John Schell
Mm-hmm.
was given the Madry job, and he's had a back and forth with the media traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's sort of tamped down recently. What do you make of her leadership thus far?
She came in and basically, she hasn't been in the role very long. I forget exactly how long, but she's really made a ton of changes. It seems like an overhaul, rooting out corruption in the police department to an extent. So I think it's like impressive that she's been able to do this. Obviously, like Sewell back in the day was not able to get very far with any of that. But I did think the promotion of Chell was kind of interesting because he was mentored by Madry. There's he's kind of still in this, like, the boys club of maybe pre-Tish. So seeing his elevation was something I definitely took note of. And then, I mean, the other thing I'd say about Tish is just that, like, at this point, given the immense amount of scrutiny the Adams administration is under, there are fewer shadows to hide in at this point, so it does make sense to me that she would have to go in and kind of start weeding everything out, because what other choice does she have when the feds might do that work for her or for the city anyways?
I think the other thing that's telling with this most recent development is the woman who has now been identified, who was set on fire, and someone was pushed on the subway tracks very, very recently, I mean, a couple of days ago. That also does not bode well, simply because of the notion that their subway crime, people don't want to take the subway, and this notion, for better or worse, that people feel that the city is unsafe, which is sort of difficult for the mayor who ran on a, tough on crime. What do you think of all of this, and what does this mean for the larger narrative and the weaponization, because he's got to run for office in 6 months now, and it's going to pick up now, new year. I think it's going to be a sprint now until June potentially. But what's your analysis of that?
Well, Adams actually, he was asked about this at his off topic on Tuesday, and I mean he still says he's the mayor who can protect public safety, and he says that he's gotten a number of areas of crime down, and that he can continue to do so. And he even kicked off that press conference. He starts it with a little spiel of his own, whatever he wants to highlight that day or week. And this Tuesday he highlighted, crime is down, I did this. I think he's kind of trying to have it both ways, and I don't know if it'll work or not. I mean, to an extent, like, he did come into office in this post-COVID era, so, like, he can try to take credit for a lot of, like, the city's recovering from COVID, and I think that is maybe valid, but I don't know. It's you're putting yourself in a hard position if you're saying, look at how I've improved public safety for everybody, and at the same time kind of trying to point the finger at other people when it comes to, like, subway crime and these horrible violent incidents that have happened. And on Tuesday what he said was, well, it's about the perception of things. Crime can be down and there can be these shocking incidents, and both can be true, and that's how people see it. So I don't know. I mean, it's honestly a bit of a confusing message, because it's like, well, what are we to believe? Is it that everything's fine even though there are these scary things that are happening that make people feel on edge and, like, at risk when they go about their daily life? Or I don't know, can he like juggle that? I'm not sure.
Josephine, what do you think, as someone who covers City Hall and covers the administration, what are your thoughts on major policy that comes out of the mayor's office? He announced the income tax, right? Everyone's talking about affordability, childcare, vouchers, inflation. Post-Trump, more than ever, it's pocketbook. Dems are, and at the state, at the city level, are running towards the pocketbook bread and butter issues. We saw that at the state, they shot down the Capitol, the leadership in the Senate and the Assembly shot the MTA capital plan. Is it becoming harder for the admin to push out substantive policy, a la City of Yes, when there's this constant, for you as someone who has to cover City Hall, how do you juggle the two? Think about it. There is constant noise around things like what happened today, while the admin is also responsible for pushing out messaging around policy.
Right.
For the day-to-day, New Yorkers who are looking for to stay in New York City. It's not affordable.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you asked that. I've talked to some people who said, actually, well, this might be the most productive year of the Adams administration because he's been forced to get rid of some of the more shady characters in his administration who may or may not have been using their position to benefit themselves. And instead, he has Maria Torres Springer, he has Jesse Tisch, he has people who seem to want to keep their head down and get work done. So on one hand, maybe in a strange backwards way, it's actually a good thing because there's no room for fluff, or there's less room for fluff, and they've got to just kind of lock in and get stuff done. On the other hand, it is a lot to handle, and there's probably more happening behind the scenes than we know. So not trying to hint at anything at all. It's just the nature of the thing. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. City of Yes was huge. And that was a very lengthy undertaking. That was a major accomplishment for both the Adams administration and the city council. And I don't know, I mean, assuming, I guess, that he only has one term, which I don't think is a safe assumption to make at this point, but there's a limited amount of time he has left at this point, especially pre-election, I guess, to do anything big. I mean, in the income tax thing, that has yet to be introduced, too, in the state legislature, so I'm not sure where that'll go.
How do you rate the current field?
For the re-election?
Folks looking for the nomination or to run, that are running against Mayor Adams, better said.
How do I rate them? I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's kind of a funny mix because we have a lot of people who've been around Scott Stringer. I mean, I guess I'll put Brad Lander in that bucket. He's comptroller. Potentially Andrew Cuomo, although I'm not sure. I mean, I still think Adams has a very good chance of being reelected. I know I'm not alone in that either. I think he still has a strong base. I'm not sure if the investigations or indictment will be at this point enough to slow him down, but of course we don't know what'll happen. There's so many variables. But I mean, I'm interested to see. There's so many, again, Brad Lander, people have been talking about, will he just kind of drop out and try to stay comptroller, or what will Cuomo do? I mean, that's such a wild card. He still hasn't stepped into the race yet, so, as time goes on, it seems like it's less likely, although who is to say, truly. And then... yeah, I've been interested in Mamdani. I think his social media approach is interesting. I don't know if the strategy to re-energize or just energize in the first place young voters, progressive voters, will necessarily work in a primary, a local primary, but he's an interesting candidate. Yeah, I mean, it's still... I feel like it's still not fully solid yet. There's so many names that are maybe coming in, and then I feel like it hasn't fully solidified yet.
What do you think a Trump pardon, a clemency, means for Mayor Adams? In terms of his electoral prospects?
I don't know if it would be a good thing, just because Trump is still not overall popular in New York City, despite obviously growing his support here.
But I'm going to pose this question. Trump is not he did better than Republicans have traditionally done in the most recent national
yeah, but
elections.
It doesn't make him
But I want to pose this question. If the mayor turns around and says, post a potential pardon or clemency or something in his case and says, well, yes, President Trump took the following action, but President Biden, a Democrat, pardoned his son.
And that's what he would say. He's been saying that. I think that's a fair prediction as to what his pitch would be.
But that may potentially neutralize the argument that he was pardoned by the...
Would it neutralize it? I'm not sure. I think there's...
That's a legitimate claim.
It's that...
It's sort of not apples and oranges.
I just don't think it is the same. Like, I think a father pardoning his son seems a lot different than Trump pardoning Adams. But the other thing is, like, and this is, like, courts, whatever, but I don't know, like, a lot of people are talking about a pardon, but if on, January 22nd, 23rd, whatever, the new head of SDNY dismisses the charges or basically calls off, if there is no superseding indictment by that time, if they choose to stop investigating it, there are, like, other avenues to kind of get rid of those charges than just a pardon, and that could make a difference. I mean, I don't know how much, like, voters care or people care in general about, like, which specific avenue Trump could possibly take, but maybe it would be, like, easier to spin a dismissal of charges versus a pardon. I don't know. Yeah, but I think if there is no superseding indictment or further charges on Adams, I don't know if a pardon would be beneficial, just because if voters are already sort of, like, meh on what these charges mean, and how it, like, impacts their view of Adams, I don't know if, like, inviting a relatively, like, still unpopular figure into that, like, I don't know if that would really help. And then the DA can, obviously, Bragg can do what he chooses in that too, and I think they've shown with Ingrid and then with their, Madry, like, their involvement in kind of doubling down on these investigations, they've shown that they're potentially willing to step into.
What do you think are the three major things that the mayor needs to lean in on in terms of his re-election prospects, policy in 2025?
Yeah, I would say it's, like, whatever's most important to voters. So, like, things like public safety, mental health, also as it relates to public safety, is also very important, especially, you mentioned the 2 incidents on the train. I don't fully know whether those are incidents done by people with mental illness, but signs kind of point that way. And then, I don't know, a third issue, I just go back to, like, quality of life, issues like those, like, cost of living, sort of garbage pickup, like, basic issues. But yeah, that's kind of from the voter perspective. That's my answer.
I want you to give me 3 predictions for 2025.
I'm going to say I do think there will be more charges on Adams and his orbit. I think Andrew Cuomo will make some sort of political comeback. I'm not sure if it'll
Josephine,
be for the mayor.
You have to lean in here. This is a prediction.
Okay, I'll say okay, I might be wrong here, but I feel like Cuomo for governor. I'll lay that down. I think
so
he's
you're predicting he doesn't run for mayor, he runs for governor.
Yeah, that's my prediction. And
why doesn't he run for mayor?
I just don't know if he wants it like that. I mean, hey, like, to whoever's listening, pick up the phone and tell me otherwise. But I kind of think becoming governor again would be more meaningful for him. I mean, it's the job that he lost. And I just become also just more skeptical that he is gonna run for mayor, as it's like now January and there hasn't been anything solid from him. I guess the defamation suit is one thing, but that's not really a firm step into the mayoral race.
Okay, last prediction.
And then
those are good. More charges. Governor Cuomo punts on mayor, runs for governor. Mm-hmm. What's the third one?
I mean, the obvious, but Richie Torres is going to run for governor. He'll announce a run.
So that potentially pits him against Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, in this imaginary scenario, yes. So that would be an interesting race. I'm sure it will be regardless of whether my predictions come true or not. But, yeah.
Biggest winner, 2024, city?
Adrienne Adams.
Why?
Because she will be able to leave her role as speaker with City of Yes under her belt. I do think it's the mayor's plan that was an accomplishment for her. And she stood her ground with this rift between the mayor and the council in a way that I think would have surprised a lot of people to hear.
First person. It's a good analysis. Yeah. That's a very good analysis. You're the first person to mention Speaker Adams.
Well, she likes to lay low, so I think that's maybe for her a good thing too, that she's been able to not make a lot of news.
Biggest loser, 2024.
Biggest loser. I mean, I guess Adams. It was a rough year for him. I think between the indictment and losing his like tight inner circle in the admin, I think that's a big thing for him, regardless of what happens in 2025.
Josephine, thank you for your time. Anything you want to add to the conversation that I forgot to ask you? Anything you want to mention?
No, I'll leave it at that. I'm sure we could talk for much longer too, but I'll leave it at that.
Best day on the job?
That's a hard one, actually. I mean, I guess more recently, I think the day the Adams indictment was unsealed was pretty fun, because there had been at that point weeks of really like strong anticipation. So for it to drop and kind of just have like a big news day. Big news days, busy news days are always fun, and that one felt important, and that was fun.
Worst day?
I mean, I try not to dwell on the negative too much. I mean, I'd say, like, in the past year, at least, I covered the Trump hush money trial, and there were some really grueling early morning days, waiting online, like, kind of logistical things that were hard to get through. So I'll say that.
Josephine, thank you for your time. Hopefully this won't be the last time, and continued success to you in the work that you do.